Uttamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayodhira Nashtaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Seva Bhagavati Uttama Shuki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Nigamaka Padurugaritam Param Shukam Makaram Nityam Bhagavata Seva Bhagavati Uttama Shuki Mahara Horishiku Bhivi Babakam Krishna Swadama Bhagate Dhammakare Hakaro Nashta Dishamasha Parana Kodino Didaham Tama Piada Bishita Pishitam Vivu, Samyapere and Vidam Vidavicharam Prakyahidu, Mora Aditamaram Sanklation of Animusanti and Anyatam. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Parana Paramasamitam Uttama Shakacharitam Chakara Bhagavan Vishi Nisriya Shadokasha Danyam Shastya Namat Anartya Pashamam Shakshad Bhakti Yoga Medukshara Logasha Janaturu Chakra Sapada Samidam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhikanta Namostude Jayatam Sarito Pango Mahamadar Matirgati Matsavashapadam Boja Radhanam Madana Mohanam Simana Asarasanam Vivam Sivana Karsan Finish and Urbago Gopinata Sri Sarham Divyad Vendaranika Padrumada Srimad Radnagara Shima Shanishto Shri Sri Radhishiragovina Prasadavi Sevamana Shmarami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Taya Chajagataya Krishnaya Govinaya Namo Namaha Mangalang Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guru Radhaja Mangalam Pandarikaksham Mangalayatano Om Narayana Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tanno Vishnu Prachodayate Om Mahadevi Chavidmahi Vishnu Padni Chadimahi Tanno Lakshmi Prachodayataha Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Saraswati Hari Priya Namastubhyam Namastubhya Dayatane Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vishwavanasa Devi Pranamani Hari Priya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasaya Uttare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamanaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pachani Nivashesun Varibaskadade Sadani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakti Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Excuse me a moment while I turn the heater off, otherwise I'll get all dried up in here. That should do it. Our topic today, and thanks for joining us, Anjali. Transformation Tuesday. Oh, she's got a new name for it. Well, I'm sorry. We've been using this one for, what, 3 years now. But I like the way you think. Bye, Bobby's here. Brent's here. Rob over here on Zoom. So we called our talk today, Balloon-like Desires. What's a balloon? What are the characteristics of a balloon? Well, especially for infants, they seem to be very attractive, mesmerizing. I don't think there's a child that can pass up a balloon anywhere in the world. And yet, if you're a little older, you have a little bit more information, you have a little bit more experience, you've seen a lot of balloons, been there, done that, you know that as attractive as they are, desirable they are in the moment, they don't have much of a lifespan. Balloons can be pricked and pop at any moment. If that doesn't happen, they're losing air, they're deflating. So as full and as desirable and as lifelike as a balloon may look to a child, it really doesn't have a lot of substance, nor does it have much duration. Everybody who's reached the age of 12 and above knows this, but under 12 or under 10, it's just that level of knowledge has not yet been usually attained. And the proof of that is this summer we went to a Festival of Colors in Canada, and our host was very amazing guy. And he had one daughter. He and his wife had one daughter. And from where he lived down the street, there was a fair that weekend. Just so happened to be a fair. In fact, it was funny because the night we arrived, we all, TK and myself, we were all standing on the veranda, and in connection with this fair that was produced by the local city, there was a huge fireworks display. So with a sense of humor, our host turned to me and TK and he said, "See what I arranged just to welcome you to Canada?" And we all laughed. That was funny. But the fireworks display was part of a weekend festivity, some holiday there in Canada. And he and his daughter and family had gone there, and they came back, and the daughter was so unhappy. I mean, oh my gosh. You'd thought she'd lost her favorite dog or sister or something, just wailed and wailed and wailed at the top of her lungs. And it went on for a long time. And I think until she just ran out of energy about 3 hours later. So I asked her, I said, well, what was it? You know, what terrible, terrible tragedy befell the young girl? She said, oh, she wanted a balloon at the fair and she didn't get one. I say, really? I say, really? It's kind of like if you're in the desert and you're not very experienced in the desert, or say your intelligence hasn't fully developed, such as is the case with many animals, you look out, you're very thirsty, obviously, that's what it means to be in the desert. There's no water. But you look out and you see on the horizon there what looks like a beautiful, clear, fresh lake of water. Everything you need to quench your thirst, shower, bathe, wash your clothes, give you a whole new lease on life, pick you up. Water to a dying man. So the child or the animal will immediately take that mirage as being factual and act upon that conclusion by moving towards that mirage and moving towards that mirage and moving towards that mirage and moving towards that mirage. And every step you move towards the mirage moves a step away from you. So eventually you run out of energy, you collapse there in the desert and you die. There are any number of cases. Whenever you're in the desert and you see the bones of an animal, there's a good likelihood that that animal was going towards a mirage. And being misdirected in that way, it died. Now, someone who's more experienced desert dweller can immediately recognize the mirage for what it is. It's a phantasmagoria. It has no substance, and one doesn't waste time. An experienced person knows there is no water in the desert. There's virtually no water in the desert. So it's not just like there's a lake of water there on the horizon. By applying a little bit of higher knowledge and experience, no one would ever risk their life chasing after a mirage. So, I'm much older than that young girl in Canada. To me, I couldn't see the sense of it. Why expend so much energy and so much anger, so much frustration over the fact that your father didn't buy you a balloon? It made no sense to me. But then again, when I was that age, I was probably exactly the same way. That's a difference between immaturity and maturity. Now, Krishna talks about the living beings on all categories within this material world. And let's be frank, we wouldn't have come to this material world in the first place were we not immature, were we not undeveloped, because the developed soul never leaves the spiritual world. This question comes up periodically. If we were in the spiritual world and everything was eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and we were Krishna conscious, like Prabhupada says, we're all originally Krishna conscious living beings, how in the world did we leave? How did we walk out of a place where everything was perfect? It must not have been perfect. No, or you would not have been perfect. God did not create you properly. God left something out. God created you defective, because who but a defective would walk out of the spiritual world? No, that's not the answer. God did not create the spiritual world lacking anything. It is totally attractive, spiritual, eternal, beautiful. But we were immature. It's not that we were imperfect. We're perfect parts and parcels of the Lord. But the point is, the part reaches perfected stage by acknowledging its subordinate role to the whole. If the part thinks it's the whole, then the perfect becomes imperfect. When the infinitesimal aspires to be the infinite, then that which is already perfect becomes imperfect, illusioned, mad. So none of us would have come to this material world were we not immature. I'm not saying we were imperfect. God doesn't do imperfect. But when the part, some or other, gets off track enough to aspire to be the whole, one doesn't want to serve, but one wants to be served. That is called material life. And we all came here for more or less the same reason. Now, this material world, as substantial as it seems, earth, air, fire, water, mind, intelligence, false ego, is like a balloon. And being immature for us, initially, we're enamored. We're enamored by this material world, just like a child is enamored. They've got to have that balloon. They have got to have that balloon. If they don't get that balloon, they are going to scream and yell and throw a fit for literally hours and hours and hours and hours. Let me just see if I've got it here. I want to quote you if I've got it in my pad here. The shopping mall song, which was a combined. Here it is. See, the thing is, when we become mature, we don't aspire for anything of this material world. We aspire to only minimize, bring down to the barest essential, the things that we have to do, the duties that we perform, and then maximize our devotional practices so we can get back home, back to the spiritual world. And you cannot even be a neophyte in terms of devotional service without, even in the initial phases, start to see the falsity and the temporality of this material world. Just like after a certain age, after a certain number of experiences, you look at the balloon like couldn't care less. I mean, I go into the dollar store and they have all these balloons for birthdays and anniversaries, and there's sometimes excitement which is generated around them for tonight's festivities or for this afternoon's birthday party. But it doesn't do anything for me because the balloon itself is not an object of desire. It might have been when I was young, but it's no longer. So similarly, the first symptom of advancement in spiritual life is that you no longer desire after the balloon-like features of this material world. Bhakti pasanava varaktana chata chaishushu tuleka shara papadyana nashinacha tushti pushti shurapyo nishnataha. It's just like a man eats a meal. With every bite, his hunger goes away. With every bite he takes, he's less and less attracted to the very food itself that he's eating. And that means that any advancement in devotional service, even that of a neophyte, is cutting away at those material desires, is cutting away the illusions, is opening a window so that one can now see the spiritual world and move towards it. To put down those roots, develop your creeper of devotional service, something we neglected to do because we ran off when we first became some or other conscious, when we came out of our sleep. We didn't take the time to thoroughly assess the situation, get the proper information, but we ran off on an impulse to satisfy our own senses. However, when we turn things around 180 degrees and begin to chant the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What it does, it tapers our headlong, mad rush to indulge willy-nilly in material pursuits. We start to prioritize. We start to look at all the things that occupy our time and throw this out the window and throw this out the window. It's like people in a boat in a stormy sea. They start throwing off the deck. They start throwing into the water anything which is not essential for their survival. They'll throw away a TV set, but they'll keep a life vest. They'll throw away a hair blower, but they'll keep the anchor, the extra anchor. They'll throw away, they'll throw away their purse, they'll throw away their money, but they'll keep the flare gun. So here's a poem that's applicable here that we all composed. Carmen will recognize the verse from here, and Natasha will recognize the verse here. Brent will recognize the verse here. So in case you haven't heard this before, this is about prioritizing. When you become a devotee, it's not just one more thing to do on top of all the other things that you already have to do. Devotional service, when it's properly understood, never complicates your life. It always simplifies your life. In complicated material life, in order to get the sense gratification that we feel is our right, we have to please our family, we have to please our boss, we have to please the government, we have to please our neighbors, we have to please so many people. Right now, we're applying for the Festival of Colors, 30th and 31st of March. And we have to please the Sheriff's Department in so many ways. Some of them are reasonable. Some of them, another name for the Sheriff's Department is public safety. So some things are reasonable. I can understand the requirements would be needed for public safety, but other things are just not reasonable. There's no bearing on public safety. You know, we have to have 2,000 parking spaces for an estimated crowd of 4,000 people. That's 2 people per car. Well, nobody comes 2 people a car to the Festival of Colors. They pile in. They come 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But we have to have 2,000 parking spaces when in fact 800 or 900 should be more than adequate, you know. And then we can't allow any parking in the Salem City housing developments which are behind the temple. Well, I drove around all those streets behind the temple last night, and you know, out of like 20 streets, residential streets, there were only 3 cars parked in the road. There were plenty of unmarked, no number, no color, no yellow, no red. There's plenty of curb space, probably enough for 300, 400 cars on the street. And I never heard that anything's illegal about parking curbside. The residents don't use the curbside. They do have spots with the number of their house on it, but they don't use it. They all park in their driveway. So the thing is, in this material world, things get very complicated very quickly. But when you start prioritizing, recognize that we're not here to enjoy this material world. And even if we're here to enjoy this material world, there's something fundamentally off because we can't stay, you know, spend your whole life working and slaving in order to get the right house, the right income, the right transportation. And by the time you get all that, you're too old to enjoy it. And all you can do is pass it down to your kids who waste everything anyway. Material life is another name for complicated life, stressful life. Spiritual life should be another name for rest, for peace. Your to-do list gets pared down. And so I think I've said enough by way of introduction to this song. Let me get into it here. The world is like a shopping mall, hustling, bustling, and loud. Distraction and attractions abound. Sights and sounds can enshroud like clouds obscuring the ground. We don't want to wander aimless in the crowd, our mission forgotten, our commission under remission. Life's endless paths distract and delay. The stores in life small will lead you astray. Discriminate to see Maya's bait and stick to the straightaway to reach heaven's gate. Pick up only that provision which will get us out of prison, revive our eternal condition. We want to listen to the sages by whose grace we are engaged, by whose vision we are risen. It's not worth the risk to stray from Krishna's shopping list. Better not too much stopping, hopping from aisle to aisle, swapping precious minutes for trinkets. Here is the gist of Krishna's list. Chant my name, claim my protection, let go of tension, let my affection sustain you. Keep your attention on me exclusively. And when you enter Maya's store, better to get less than more. Stick to the list. Don't miss eternal Krishna bliss because of the hiss of Maya's kiss. Be as focused as the bees. Look only for the flower, not the stem or the leaves. The devotee can pull oil from water, milk from venom, the clean from the soiled. As we traverse this earthly plane, do what you came for and nothing more. Don't be tempted by the glitter. Filter out the litter. Rather than frittering away your life, splintering consciousness and going astray, stay the course back to the source, the ever-existing youth, the absolute truth, the root of creation, who plays upon his flute. You can all pat yourselves on the back. Everyone had a hand in putting that in. I can't wait till I've committed that fully to memory and can unpack that with a little bit of musical soundtrack at some festival or so other. So in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Name vidur saragana prabhavam namarisha hamadiri devanam marishanam chasarvashaha. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and the sages. Krishna himself is the Paramatma dwelling within everyone's heart. From the Paramatma, all the individual infinitesimal parts and parcels, the Atmas have come. Because of the presence of the Atmas inside of the bodies of the 8,400,000 species of life spread throughout the universe, there's life, there's animation, there's beauty, there's attraction. So ultimately, everything is Krishna, Anantam, Advaitam, Achyutam, Anantam, Rupam. I had someone ask me at the Sunday feast, are we monists or are we dualists? Do we believe that ultimately everything is one undifferentiated homogeneous force field? Or do we believe that the absolute truth is a person and we are also eternally separated emanations from him? Now, the reason I say eternally separated is because some schools say God is a person and we come from him, but eventually we go back into him and merge in him like a drop of water will merge back into the ocean. So therefore we say, just like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamai Vamsa Jiva Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Krishna says the living beings are my parts. But in case we start to make the mistake of thinking that the parts will merge back in and become one with the whole, he says, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, that having created them as separate living beings with their own measure of free will and their own insight, their own creativity, their own energy, their own talents and abilities, having created them out of me, they are my parts, but never will they come back and merge in me. Even if at the time of a cosmic annihilation, the soul is not self-realized, and at that time, at the time of annihilation, souls are retracted back into the body of Vishnu. They don't lose their individuality, they don't merge. They're within Vishnu, they're sleeping, but they still retain their individuality. Ramanujacharya, the great Vaishnavacharya, he gave the example that if a green bird flies into a green tree, it may appear to the casual sightseer that the green bird has merged its greenness with the greenness of the tree. But if you continue looking, after some time, the bird then flies away from the tree. So you see that in entering the tree, and by looking, you can, once the green bird has entered the green tree, you can no longer distinguish the tree from the bird. But when the bird exits the tree, you see that all along the bird maintained its greenness amongst all the other greenness of the tree. So even though we may be retracted in the body of the Lord at the end of a cosmic annihilation and go to sleep for maybe millions of years, we still don't lose our individual identity. We are dualists. But not only that, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Achinta Abheda Abheda Tattva. We are different from God because he created us individual with our own free will, which means we can either accept him or reject him. And we are also similar to him in a qualitative sense. Quantitatively, we differ from God. He's great and we're small. But qualitatively, we're one with him. So in that sense, we're monists. In a limited sense, we're monists. We believe there is a oneness between ourselves and the Lord, and it's a oneness of quality. But I can't become God. I can't merge into God because I'm infinitesimal and he's infinite. The finger cannot become non-differentiated from the body, but what the finger can do is pick up food, put it in the mouth, provide sustenance to the stomach. Once that food is digested, then the energy is distributed back throughout the whole body. And then not only does the finger, but the whole rest of the body get benefited. But without that switch, without that original cause of all causes, without the primeval Lord, the singularity who is a person, it's only when Krishna flicks the on switch that Brahma is created, that the conglomerate of material elements compose themselves in a corner of the spiritual world called the Mahatattva. It's only after Krishna flicks the switch that you get one action after another proceeding, one after another, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. But to begin everything, to kickstart this entire cosmic manifestation, that person had no cause. There was no cause for the cause of all causes. He causes everything, and he himself is not a byproduct. When the Lord appeared before Dhruva Maharaj, Dhruva did austerities for 6 months. And originally he'd gone into the forest very naively. He was told to look for God. He was told that great saints and sages go into the forest to look for God in order to achieve God realization. So he took that literally, and as a 5-year-old boy, he entered into the forest. He was asking the deer, are you God? He was asking the rabbits, are you God? He was asking the eagles, are you God? Finally, Narada Muni schooled him on who is God and how to reach God. And when the Lord, so he examined all the various creatures. He had some anthropological, zoological knowledge under his belt because of his empirical research, what he did before he met his spiritual master. So he wasn't unaware of all the various species of life. However, as the fruit of his austerities, when Lord Krishna, with the 4 arms, holding the club, the lotus flower, the discus, and the conch shell, appeared before Dhruva, Dhruva said, Tiryang nagadvija sarisa deva marjadabi sarasad vishesham. So far, I know, so far my research goes, the form that I'm seeing right now has nothing to do with the cause and effect of this material world. This form is not a byproduct of a combination of matter or even of spirit and matter. This form is unprecedented. This form is unique in all of the world. And I actually think that when I'm seeing this form, I'm not missing anything else, that there can be nothing which manifests itself in this material world except that it had its origin in the Lord. So if I'm seeing him, there is really nothing else that I could see which would match him, Now, one Vaishnav commentator said that if some or other, just hypothetically, God were to reveal himself to us in our present immature state of consciousness, where our senses are still sort of half and half. They're half interested in devotional service to Krishna. They half like devotional service to Krishna. But then we have breaks. We give ourselves downtime, or we read a book or watch some TV or whatever. So because our senses are not fully matured in Krishna consciousness, therefore the possibility is to be swept away and to lose our focus. So in devotional service, when one is fixed in Krishna consciousness, there's no chance of one being swayed to the right or the left. The Lord is the switch for everything. He is beyond all the 8,400,000 species of this material world. And when Dhruva Maharaj saw him, he recognized immediately that this is a person, if I'm seeing him, I'm seeing everything. Everything is contained within him. So one commentator said that if we, unlike Dhruva, who was completely purified by 6 months of austerities and devotional service, if the Lord were to appear before us in our present immature condition, with our senses kind of this way and kind of that way, but not fully committed, we would die. We would die. Our senses would reach, they would go from 0 to 120, and there would be a threshold that we would reach, and it would cause everything to switch off. Unless we have purified tasu Krishna namani nababhagana sevan mukhi jiva shrayamevashparatya. But Krishna doesn't do that to us. He doesn't appear before us now. It would be fatal, not only materially, but spiritually as well. be so traumatic, it'd be such a shock. Like, what the heck? So we have to come along gradually, follow the process, follow the footsteps of the previous acharyas, and gradually, systematically, and hopefully without relapses, tesham satata yuktanam, bhajatam priti purvakam. Look at the lesson of Gajendra. There was a moment where he wasn't quite as thoughtful as he should be in treating this sage who had visited his palace. He was mostly without any flaw, but not to the point where the sage didn't find something to criticize. And into that little opening, the sage inserted his curse. Gajendra, Indradumna, who was that close to Krishna, was tripped up by a little inattention on his part. And of course, this is obviously the plan of the Lord, so we can learn from his case. And then he took birth as an elephant, and he lived without thinking of Krishna or chanting Hare Krishna for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So Krishna withholds himself from us until we're 100% pure. And that's why even the sages and the demigods don't necessarily see the Lord. They don't necessarily get his darshan face to face. Their existence is dependent upon him. All the demigods are atmas. They're atmas, just like you and I. They're not plenary portions of the Lord. The plenary portions of the Lord are Vishnu and Shiva, Lakshmi, Radharani, Sita, Ram, so-and-so, Varaha, Kurma, Matsya, Narsingha. These are the full expansions of the Lord. They're worshipable as God. But that's not the case with us, and it's not the case with the demigods. We are individual living beings. And so for us to be privy to the vision of the Lord, the association of the Lord, we require to submit ourselves to the purificatory process which the Lord himself has laid down as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If we are constitutionally the servants, constitutionally the parts, then we have to get back into that role. We have to be rehabilitated. We've been trying to be the masters for millennia after millennium after millennium. Now that there has arisen within us the inkling of a desire to be the servant of the Supreme, we should take advantage of those who have trod that path. If you want to be a servant, you have to mix with others who are servants. The problem is we've been mixing for lifetime after lifetime with egotistical living beings who want to be lords, who want to be masters, for whom the word and the concept servant is anathema. So we immediately have to seek out alternative association. That's the first symptom of sat sange tyagya vaishnavachara. First instruction Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave neophyte devotee is get into the right association. If you want to be a devotee, associate with other devotees. If you want to be a businessman, find other businessmen. There are clubs you can join, pay a fee. You can go to lunch there. There are social functions. You'll associate with other businessmen. You'll become a better businessman. If you're an alcoholic, there are bars, there are places where alcoholics go and congregate. Whatever we want our persona to be, we will become like those with whom we associate. Similarly, if you want to be a servant of the Lord, then you have to seek out sadhu sange, sarva shastahai, lava mata sadhu sange, sarva siddhihai. For those who want to go back home, back to Godhead, who want to revive their original servitude to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no higher perfection than seeking out and finding the association of sadhus. This is the conclusion of all scriptures. If you read all the scriptures, and after having read that, do not conclude that I need a guru, then it's been a waste of time. If you don't read all the scriptures, but you find a guru and train in the association with the guru and learn from the heart of the guru, you taste what it means now to be a servant instead of to try to be a master, then you're considered to be the knower of all the scriptures, the best of Brahmins, the best of the best, like that. And what happens in the process of transforming one's consciousness is that one sees Krishna, one comes to the point of seeing Krishna behind everything, behind everywhere. And as a neophyte, again, we're not committed to one path. We're kind of in both camps initially. We're trying to give up sense gratification, but we haven't fully done that. We want to absorb ourselves in devotional service, but it's the sense gratification that holds us back. So we're still like the little child that has its attraction to the balloons, the deflatable, the ephemeral, glittery balloons of this material world. And Krishna says, that's okay. That's okay. Just like the child, it has balloon-like desires. It has immature, unbecoming desires for temporary, insubstantial things, which as an adult is a waste of time. But children do that. That's what children do. So the important point is the child goes to the Father. When a child wants anything, whether it be Krishna praying or whether it be a balloon-like toy in this material world, if the child develops the habit of going to the Father, even if it's for material desires, that will be the child's success. The daughter of my host at this Festival of Colors, she cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. But as frustrated as she was, as angry as she was that her father didn't buy her a balloon, and as much of a tantrum and as prolonged as it was, and as ferocious as it was, one thing she didn't do, she didn't go to the neighbor. She didn't give up. She didn't say, okay, my father won't give me a balloon, so I'll go to the neighbor. No, whether she's going to get a balloon or not, she's going to do it through the Father. Similarly, those who are on the devotional path, they need to make a decision that even if I do have material desires, I'm going to go to Krishna for the satisfaction of those material desires. And in due course of time, Krishna will wean you from those material desires. Those material desires will give up the ghost in favor of full-blown devotional service. Akama, sarvakama, mokshakama, udariti, tivrena, yajitam, purusham vasham. Every category of person, immature and mature, fully devoted in devotional service, standing on two separate boards in the water, doing some sense gratification, some devotional service. Akama, the pure devotees of liberated souls, yes, they engage in devotional service, fully committed. Sarakarma, that's just the opposite. Sarakarma means all desires. One has only an inkling of desire or interest in devotional service, ado shraddha, but still, they should engage. Rather than going to a demigod for the fulfillment of desires, they should go to Krishna. All the purposes that are served by the small ponds are automatically served by the great reservoir of water. So even those who are polluted, shot through with all material desires, they're also recommended to go to Lord Krishna for the fulfillment of the desires. Moksha, akama, sarva kama, moksha kama udariti. And then there are those who want to merge, the monists that I spoke about earlier. They want to become one with the Lord. They have a mistaken impression that we can become undifferentiated from the Lord at some future point of time. They're all recommended to go to the Lord. Why? Why? Tivrena bhakti yoginam yajitam purushampasham. Because Krishna is the supreme transcendent Lord. Krishna is the light, and Maya, or ignorance, is the darkness. Wherever there's light, there's no darkness. You cannot worship Krishna, chant his names, eat his prasadam, associate with devotees. You cannot immerse yourself in the light of devotional service without the darkness beating a hasty retreat. Maybe not all at once, but to the extent that you let the light in, to the extent that you transfer from your old friends to your new devotee friends, from your old eating habits to your new habits of eating prasadam, from going to parties on Saturday night or going to clubs to going to the temple and singing and dancing and eating prasadam. As you transfer from the one to the other, you become purified. Why? Because that's the nature of God. You've heard me say this before. With all the things that the sun can do, causes photosynthesis, it produces oxygen. Without oxygen, we couldn't breathe. It gives us vitamin D, so we get nourished, we get freedom from diseases by spending time in the sun. We couldn't exist for even 15 minutes without the sun. But there's one thing the sun can't do. You've heard me say this before. The sun cannot produce darkness. So you cannot be engaged in Krishna consciousness, even if you start out being polluted with all kinds of material desires. You cannot continue on the path of devotional service, associating with devotee, taking prasadam, following the instructions of purify, and not become purified. So even if you're not Krishna conscious, the act of going to Krishna brings you to Krishna consciousness. It purifies the heart. Gajendra, in the beginning of this pastime, as the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam opens, we find him a full-fledged, committed, card-carrying sense gratifier. And yet, by the arrangement of the Lord, because of his devotional service in a past life, now we find him reciting the 28 prayers, which he had composed in his last life as Indra Dhumaraj. He took a life and death situation. He took a challenge. What happened to him is the worst thing that can happen to a materialist. It's the absolute antithesis of what a materialist wants to happen. The prospect of having happened to Gajendra, to oneself, what happened, is the ultimate horror for a person who's materially enjoying, who has a high position, a family, a good income. There's nothing that they fear, they dread more than having happened to them what happened to Gajendra. And yet this material world is full of crocodiles. It's full of crocodiles, and they're just waiting for Krishna to give the word. So they attack, and all of your material opulence is finished. And yet, although Gajendra had happened to him, the thing which no materialist wants to have happen, the thing which every materialist with insurance policies and security programs and surrounding themselves by family and working hard, every act they do is to prevent this kind of thing from happening. And yet, in spite of their best efforts, sometimes Yashaham Anugraham Krishna shows mercy on them by taking everything away. So in all of that, Gajendra went from being a really card-carrying sense gratifier, almost an acharya of the sense gratificatory world. You would almost look at the life of Gajendra and say, that's for me. Almost, except for the fact that he got grabbed by the crocodile in the water. And then you stop yourself. Wait a minute. There is something far more than heavenly life in the heavenly planet. There's something far more valuable, something far more lasting, and it's devotional service of the Lord. And if you follow the story of Gajendra to this point, to the 3rd chapter of the 8th canto, you'll see that he's given up all material aspirations. He's no longer interested in any sense gratification, and he's calling out. He's offering with his trunk the lotus flower with all of his heart, and he's calling out helplessly, Lord, in spite of my shame, I'm calling your name in the midst of the fight. Please reclaim me from the might of the crocodile's bite. When I'm released from the teeth of the croc block, ignorance in my life, lock me into your devotional service. Okay, I have to plug in. I'm about to go off the air here because is losing power. So let me just plug this in. In any case, let's see what we have here in the sidebar. There have been lots of contributions, which I was aware of on the left-hand side here. Let's just see what beautiful contributions, additions we have. Carmen, welcome back from Cambridge, I believe it was. Tell us someday about, in a few words, what the benefit was. Anyway, she's a good wordsmith, and she has today written, we don't lack perfection, we lack direction. We're wild like a child as we conspire after desire. It's not impurity, it's immaturity. It's nice. That's nice. Yeah, we had a discussion a few weeks ago about bad seed. Is there such a thing as bad seed? You know, we hear Hamas on October 7th, people being described as pure evil. But in our discussion, we decided that there isn't any such thing as pure evil. Every living being is created good. God is good, and so he creates good. Like I said, the sun cannot create darkness. But then having been created by the Lord, if you turn your back on him, then you cast yourself in shadow. So I don't know if there's any such thing as a bad seed, but there are people who have turned their back on God and cast themselves so deeply into darkness that everything they do causes pain and suffering to other living beings. And now, while we do assert the purity of the soul, we also, as a practical matter, if you're an administrator, a politician, or a member of law enforcement, you can't allow people who have a taste for causing suffering to others. People are so far removed from Krishna's gentleness and peacefulness in the image of which they're created. If they're so far removed from that, they have to be taken down. It's the duty of the state to take down people who enjoy the suffering of others, notwithstanding the fact that originally they were pure. More from Carmen. Pure association is the right education because devotees are the representation of wisdom, application, and ultimate spiritual assimilation. Nice. You know, I should stop in my own presentation and just go to these because these are further incitements to just deepening and broadening this topic of the discussion. I just get in such of a rhythm. I don't want to break the rhythm. That's why I go to these at the end. But it would be also an option to just stop myself every once in a while and just look at how you guys are contributing and like I said, deepen and broaden the discussion. Right now, I'm not in that mindset, but I can see how that would be a valid alternative way of conducting these discussions. I'll mull over that. Brent says, you may really want a balloon at the fair, but there's nothing there. Don't be immature. Make your desires pure. Yeah, it's hard just to tell a child, don't be immature, but you have to hook the child up with an adult who can give them the proper, set the proper example and give them the right kind of training. Okay, let's see what it was. Have you got two from? No, we have three from Carmen. The third one is individuality is the reality, but God is the background that surrounds all that's found. Very nice. Anjali is with us. Nitra, that's Namamrita. We're so much enjoying the association of Namatrita and his wife, Bhakti Janani. Wonderful, sweet devotees. Patrick Kelly, Lakshmi Nrsinga, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. That's it. And then Rob, what last but not least, we'll save the best for the last. Have you been in a position where you could pen some verses this morning, Rob?
Yes, Prabhuji. And thank you for this class today. And I really appreciate all the poetic quips that everyone else has put together too. Some good ones today. Nice. They're always good, but really good today.
Nice.
All right. Desires are like a balloon. They will lose appeal very soon.
They will lose their appeal very soon. Yeah, true.
Spend too long chasing the mirage, and we find ourselves in spiritual triage. Mistaking ourselves for the whole got us sent to Maya's school.
True. Yep. We're not
To be
imperfect, but we're immature.
to be
Sorry.
purely Krishna conscious is a gradual process.
Mm-hmm.
Association is key. Who you spend time with is who you will be.
True.
And purge the urge to merge.
Send those to
Haribol.
me. Haribol. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So around our central discussion, we have a lot of extra supportive statements, poems, and rhymes. So it's a complete experience that we offer here on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays. Anjali would like us to call these transformational Tuesdays, but I'm afraid we're too set in our ways at this point. Next lifetime, perhaps. So thanks for having been with us. We'll have one more session this week, tomorrow morning, for Wisdom Wednesday, and we've got lots of good information and stories to share with you. So please be sure and circle back around tomorrow morning, 7:30 Mountain Standard Time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.